Welcome to the first Conference of Natural Resources and Development. Expositions of November 26.
So when Hurricane G in 2004 hit both countries, there were around 3,000 fatalities in Haiti compared to only 18 in the Dominican year. So Haiti is highly degraded in terms of deforestation, erosion, etc. on risk reduction and disaster preparedness. Because ecosystems can help in all stages of the disaster cycle. So what we have, for example, doing this, we work for the potential for reforestation and restoration. So we look for areas where we can reforest. And that was with the ratification of the rivers. We lost retention. And that was the only chance to stop the suburbanization process and leave some retention. To combine disaster risk with nature conservation. So in Brazil we have permanent protection areas, PPAs, to keep them there along rivers, lakes, top mountains, slopes. And that of course includes not only disaster risk reduction, but disaster risk reduction is one important factor.
This is what we did. We tried to bring this eco-DRR topic into higher education, what means Mozambique from Brazil and Indonesia, back and forth. And overall, in the end, it's 50 hours of teaching material. All the universities part of the CNRD network, each of them developed a case study. There's even role plays, there's exercises. We had quite some fun. Blocks, which is giving each university also the chance to adapt it to the needs of the respective university and the different programs. So this is geography, any kind of engineering discipline, sociology, anyone could adopt this module, adapt lots of different instruments in it, and in the end there is a 5 hours block on mainstreaming environment and DRR in development, also with a focus on economic aspects, of course. We are hoping that in the end, this eco-DRR module will create a generation of students that have a training on the topic. And in the end, this hopefully also leads to more research, especially interdisciplinary research in the area.
And the idea is to work with our members as well as individuals as our members to contribute to the global conservation movement of this world. You can become members. Membership is free. You become part of a network, you have access to a lot of information, you get opportunities to publish your research areas. And now, because of challenges, because of emerging issues like energy, food, climate change, we've been pushed to look into nature as a solution. And as you can see, 2 out of these 3 key areas of work is looking at nature-based solutions and learning process. Often policies come about by default and they create very good practices. This is pictures from the Great West East Japan earthquake, 2011. You can see a building still standing behind the coastal forest. The coastal forest actually acted as a filter for secondary debris. We loosely define it as sustainable management, conservation, and very importantly, restoration of ecosystems that reduce risks from disasters, mitigate hazards, as well as increase the longer-term livelihood resilience of
the student year, and 220,000 families without houses. The World Bank in his book Earthquake Reconstruction say government leadership is the key factor in determining a successful recovery of any affected area, to rebuild the houses in the same places where the houses were destroyed. And we are convinced that this is the best way, thinking in a long term and in a social point of view. So, in house.
Era imposible poder reparar la casa. La única medida que nos quedaba era hacer una casa nueva para un segundo.
Was not able to manage the flood protection. So that gives us a new thought about how to look for much more detail in the hydropower operations. Only a small hydropower called Avung, which is located for the western portions. And this is the general operation rules for the reservoir. They have a daily storage 340 meter. The idea is like right now that we have to develop a planning study. So, and we try to incorporate other management decisions, which helps to integrate public interventions in the model to to give a complete picture for the decision making. And then we go
gas oil or ethanol, or both, or a mixture, important producer of sugarcane in the world, 45% of sand, neosol parcellenic, neosol. And we made in this place erosion plots of 100 meters square meters. In triplicate, this is reduction, increase interception, increase evapotranspiration, and reduce the groundwater recharge. That's the diagrams.
So I pose the question: in how far does this type of production lead to degradation of the dry forest? So that is my study area. In part because I expected that due to the general conclusions that type of production has reduced the tree density in the dry forest, but only a certain hardwood tree species have been more depleted as compared to softwood tree species. Large diameter trees are the most exploited for charcoal production.
Really possible. But it could be really ambiguous if you are promoting conservation, on the other hand promote deforestation and tell the people that they have to keep cutting forests in order to maintain this rotation system. That 5 out of 6 of our communities, they have invaders and they have problems with neighboring communities. And nevertheless, I want to say that pollution of water could be also a problematic issue, especially in a country where we have oil spill every week. The whole household pressure it's left to the women. Oil production is a priority of the country, so it could happen that many of these oil and mining concessions can happen over RED Plus projects or any payment for ecosystem services project. Somehow I want to say that there is a necessity that all ministries work together in order to find ways to cope along each other. Nevertheless, RED can help to solve issues like food security, diversification of income, and also land rights.
La importancia de las dunas en regiones metropolitanas, en regiones cerca de ciudades, por su colaboración en la regulación del agua, en el control de la erosión, por su defensa de las ciudades contra, por ejemplo, efectos de tsunami, de la gran concentración urbana en el año. Y en este gráfico quería indicarles que actualmente se encuentra aprobado el plan metropolitano de la región de Valparaíso, que se denomina PREMVAL, construcción de áreas urbanas dentro del área de las dunas. En primer lugar, cómo se desarrolló históricamente el uso de las dunas, y cuáles serían los instrumentos de planificación dentro de esa área urbana que fueran ecológica, económicamente y socialmente viables por el uso de costa, el uso de la ejecución de RAIs o de relativo y la percepción social de la gente de cómo usar de mejor manera las dunas y protegerlas, y cómo la gente puede utilizar las dunas de mejor manera y cómo mantenerlas ecológicamente y económicamente.
Community development and nature conservation efforts in southeastern Zimbabwe. Indigenous communities living in these areas, the concept of community dependence has been overlooked, and the protection of biodiversity took center stage. So the main aim of the research was to evaluate the relationship, was to identify key issues in the regional national parks engagement with each other. This is my study area. So as you can see here, that's the community, it's the Chita community came with them. So there were like continual displacements of the Chita people by the government. Participation of especially the indigenous communities is more superficial. But the major decision making lies with consequently there is incompatible relationship between community development and nature conservation. The Zimbabwean conservation history, the vocabulary and practice has been dominated by exotic concepts of preservation.
And here you can see beetroot, which is also grown for commercial purposes. And these two crops which are seen here are mainly used for their own consumption, is grown. And here behind you can see in this first section, the beans which is grown is for their own subsistence use. Here
This area is around 435 square kilometers, and here I've chosen 3 village sites, and they have a household of number of households around 55 to 80 households. Assisting the farmers for better agricultural. These maps will be integrated into the GIS system. I have also collected data using GPS, so these two will be integrated together to see how the shift has been. Of understanding the agricultural transformation process and drivers of land use changes of the indigenous communities, and also to recommend sustainable land use policies.
Interdisciplinary research about environmental knowledge and environmentally friendly behavior. Made surveys of almost 2,000 people in Chile. There are very extremely rich people and extremely poor people, and if you go to different places along the coast, you can find extremely rich people and extremely poor people, and as you can see, people with a higher income have more knowledge about the environment. Extremely rich people, they know a lot about the environment, but they behave worse.
Introduced so-called management areas in Chile. For a short while, almost all Chilean artisanal fisheries have been submitted to this kind of new system. Fishers as a collective can exploit a given area, about 4 or 5 hectares, and they pay taxes for that. And this is because they have a common sea ground, they have a common care of the species, they also do the harvest in common, and then they also have a common commercialization there. In most of the coast or the land in Chile is private. So is also the coast. So we're having some progress in that regard. Is that government has given a sea portion to the fishers in order to work with marine resources, but the problem of the land, which just is attached to the fishing ground, has not been solved. The competition and the struggle for the space and resources among various actors, we think affect the process of becoming actors, especially in the rural areas. It's difficult to evaluate and say that, okay, this is going very well. You have to really look at particular cases in order to draw any kind of conclusion, because the conditions vary really very much. And I think that is something that it should be paid attention by the state in the future. Many of these
our intervention, there is interactions going on between these two systems, human systems and natural systems, are producing a lot of degradation or causing a lot of environmental degradation in city areas. And we can see there are numerous human systems which has got which interact with our natural systems, creating a lot of problems and challenges to our sustainable growth. This has happened actually in case of our context, when we have all kinds of, in case of slums, the worst thing is like they don't have any legal status, but in reality they don't exist in the government system. Now the new issue that the climate change has emerged actually in new millennia, it shows that how these cities are contributing, how the cities are consuming the products, and how these cities are actually responsible for more than 40% of all energy that being consumed. That is what we are now has the result of our own past actions. It certainly follows that whatever we wish to be in future can be produced by our present actions. So we have to know how to act.
Identify what can be done by looking at the plants and the people, the occupation, and what do the laws say that the land can be, how the land can be used, and what is the current environmental governance in the area. Previous vegetation, original vegetation in the area, which is Restinga, mangrove, lone montane, and whatnot. And so from 1987, residents associations, so civil society, banded together, convinced the Brazilian army to work with them, and the city government that jumped on board as well. And so down here, and we can see the photo in 2008, and the wonderful job of reforesting. And one of the ideas was to not only include wiki maps, here we have an example, which is the blue thing with a little face in there, of people who are actually in slums, and it's a participative thing. Here we have Wiki Map. Up here we have the WCMC, which is a part of the IUCN, which is
that in the area where I come from, most of the people cannot, especially this is characteristic of the Arab countries, they cannot afford integrated production of food and biofuels and enable recycling of residues and integrated planning across the nexus, involving also city and spatial planning, environmental protection and cost. This is comparison between Egypt in the most downstream and Ethiopia in the most upstream, where you can feel that in terms of precipitation and water productivity, there is a big gap. Also, and the Nile